Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, our second episode of the week, we are taping this early. I am once again on the road. Now, not to Auckland, New Zealand, as I was last week, but I'm actually heading up to San Francisco. I'm actually doing an appearance with the legendary Brian McBride of the U.S. men's national team as a player, and now the general manager of the U.S. men's national team. So that's going to be fun to see him, talk to him, and talk to the good folks up there when it comes to San Francisco. But what we wanted to do was put together a show here. And so we have an interview with another legend. The great Carli Lloyd joins us. I saw her down in Auckland for the Women's World Cup draw. So she's going to join us in the first segment, and we're going to talk all about the women's national team and that draw. Then in the second segment, we're going to continue on with our deep dive into the positions when it comes to the U.S. men's national team. Again, that roster drop is happening on November 9th, and the 26 players that Gregg Berhalter is going to bring, and that are going to make that plane to Qatar for the World Cup in November and December. And we're going to do the midfield situation on this pod and look into all of the different players that potentially could be on that plane or are going to be on the plane. And then our final segment is going to be a look ahead. As we know, MLS playoffs coming this weekend, so a lot of MLS stuff to talk about, and then some EPL and I think some La Liga stuff that we're looking forward to this weekend when it comes to all the soccer that we are watching. And then I'll give you my one for the road here. So that's a recap. Mosse, by the way, welcome. Everything good?
Everything is good.
Are we ready to light this candle?
Let's do it.
All right, let's jump right into our interview with the great Carli Lloyd. All right, we're welcoming in one of the greats, Mosse, and a return performer when it comes to the State of the Union, the great Carli Lloyd, our colleague coming up for the Men's World Cup. I'm talking to Carli. I'm seeing Carli here through the screen, but we were just together a mere hours ago back in New Zealand for the Women's World Cup draw that she hosted. And I'll tell you what, Mosse, before we even talk to Carli, I just want to say, she did an incredible job. It is not easy, and I got a peek behind the scenes as to what was going on. She did not miss a beat. She could do this for a living if she wanted. It was wonderful to see, incredibly professional and entertaining and interesting and beautiful. Everything that she did was wonderful. How is that for an introduction, Carli? First off, did you get any sleep?
I got some sleep, but yes, I appreciate the introduction. I'm not quite up to your level yet, so I'm still chasing that.
You were wonderful, and we had a really good time. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the full experience, because we were down there for a week and you were rehearsing. Many of our viewers and many of our listeners have watched draw shows and FIFA draw shows, and they are glitz and glamour and spectacle, and they have their own kind of aesthetic. But before we get into the actual draw, give us a little peek behind the scenes as to what you had to do. And I'm not just talking about the 10 or 20 different rehearsals that you had, but that experience for you hosting the draw show down there.
Yeah, it's an honor. And I think, being a player for so long, you just watch the draw. You don't know exactly what goes into it, but there is a massive, massive team behind the show. It is a full-on show. There's presenters, there's performers, there's hosts. There's, the likes of you that have to strategically pull out the balls. And it's incredible. I mean, yes, we had loads and loads of rehearsals, script changes, just everything. But to get the experience in Doha for the Men's World Cup, and then to come in and be able to co-conduct the Women's World Cup draw. I mean, obviously that felt a bit more special, obviously, having played for the national team for so long. And yeah, it was incredible. I mean, the team that made this show all possible, was unbelievable. Long days, a lot of hours, not a lot of sleep, but it was an incredible honor, and it was really exciting from my standpoint.
Well, you mentioned you had hosted the draw in Doha for the upcoming Qatar World Cup. Again, you'll be our colleague going over there. And then you didn't miss a beat, and now you've done the women's. Peek behind the curtain. So, I mean, you're doing a whole lot more than the likes of me and others there in terms of what we are doing. And even saying that, we had multiple rehearsals, and there's a protocol, Mosse, in terms of how you are supposed to address the bowls, how you are supposed to obviously pick the ball out of the bowl and then obviously open it up. And, they're very, very particular about how they want you to go about doing things. All right, Carli, listen, enough about that. Let's get to the important thing, because a lot of people, when they were watching the draw, they said, don't bore us, get to the chorus, get to the actual picking of the teams, because that's what we are there for ultimately, and that's what we are looking forward to next summer when this World Cup happens. Okay. As we mentioned, this is the biggest World Cup in Women's World Cup history with the 32 teams. It's the first time it's happening down in the Southern Hemisphere. The United States, as we know, defending champions, going for 3 in a row, a three-peat, something that no team, men's or women's, has ever done. When it comes to the U.S.'s group, Group E, United States, Vietnam, our friends the Netherlands, and then one of 3 teams when it comes to playoffs that are going to be happening next year. Keep in mind, as in playing in Group E, all of the games for the U.S. In group stage will be in New Zealand. We'll get to some other groups here, but they split it up into the four groups are playing in Australia for group stage, and 4 groups are playing in New Zealand. The United States' group games, as we said, in Group E will all be in New Zealand. All right, first thoughts, Carli, when it comes to United States, Vietnam, Netherlands, and then a team to be named later.
I like the group. I think, starting off with Vietnam, it will give some of these lesser, younger, experienced players a taste of what a World Cup is like. But, we all know, getting to a World Cup is difficult. And then, kicking off a World Cup is even more difficult. Teams are sharp. They're ready. There's a different mindset going into it, and it's going to be very challenging. As a player, I never wanted to ever look at any of our groups and think, oh, this is a hard group, this is an easy group. It's a long way to get to that final, and it's very important to make sure you just take it one game at a time. But I do like the group. But it's going to be the most competitive World Cup, so it's not going to be an easy thing to get to the final.
Well, Carli, that third group opponent could potentially be Thailand, which would no doubt be another blowout victory. Hopefully the U.S. women comport themselves with a bit more class this time around.
I know I'm on the other side of this now.
Yeah.
Look, you can never take your foot off the gas in a World Cup. Do players want to go out and crush teams with that many goals? Not at all. But you have to keep that momentum going, and it's it's one of those things where you just can't let your foot off that gas. So it's tough.
Looking at the draw overall, there is this narrative that the U.S. got a favorable path to the final in that England, France, and Germany are all on the other side. But if the U.S. was to finish second in its group, which is possible with the Netherlands being in there, they would likely face Sweden in the round of 16. You also have Spain on that side of the bracket, which if they ever have all their players available, could be one of the best teams in the tournament. So do you think it's that easy of a path to the final, or has that narrative been overblown a little bit?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's easy by any means. Teams are catching the U.S. and I've been saying it, all throughout the draw and in interviews. We've been ahead of the game for quite some time as far as support, investment. And now you're seeing that around the globe. More teams are being funded and supported, and the gap that the U.S. has had for so many years is very, very small. So anytime the U.S. steps out onto the field, there's no guarantees of winning, and that's the beauty of how far the women's game has come and what's to come as well. But I would never start out by saying that it's an easy path to a World Cup, because you never know what's going to happen. There's all the unknowns. There's, potential of yellow card suspensions that our team has faced in 2015. There's injuries that could potentially happen. I mean, there's all sorts of things. So, nothing is ever easy when you lift that trophy.
Carli, you're not just a wonderful host of draws, but you're an incredible and legendary player. And I want to bring you back to what you mentioned about the previous World Cup, and this is expanded World Cup, but even back at the previous World Cup, there continue to be new teams. That whole Thailand brouhaha, how did it affect you, because we were on the outside and people were screaming and yelling about, not behaving correctly or not reacting correctly and all this. I thought it was BS. I thought the whole thing was BS. You're at the World Cup. We are the defending champions, and we're there to win games. And as you mentioned, nobody's there to embarrass anybody. But this is the World Cup, and I'm going to talk more about this later on in the pod. But how did that affect you and the team when some of the criticism, even the criticism from home, came out about running up the score or the way that you reacted in that moment, and then pushing it forward when you are going to face teams? And I'm not talking about the Netherlands, but we all know there's a handful of teams that really challenge the United States. But you are going to be facing teams where you could run up the score. And by the way, Mosse, you mentioned it, goal differential could be an important part of this group relative to coming first or second. So you cannot take your foot off the pedal.
No, absolutely not. And I think in 2019, after we played Thailand and, scored many goals, obviously, we hear things, we see things. It's very easy to have access to the news around the globe. And we all kind of just chuckled. And, I think it motivated us even more because as an athlete, when you're in that situation, like you said, you can't take your foot off the gas. World Cups are all about building momentum. And the moment that you step out there and say, you know what, we're going to go a little bit easier. We're not doing ourselves any justice. We're not doing, the team we're facing any justice. I thought what was really beautiful after that Thailand game is, moments where you saw some of us players, hugging the opponent, Thailand, and they were so gracious and being able to play the number one team in the world at the time, and that's what it's all about. And I think that there are going to be score lines like that in this World Cup. That's just the reality of it with the expanded teams. And it's important to do whatever is possible to continue that momentum. And that's the most important thing. But as we've always done, 2015, no one thought we were going to get out of our group of death. And it's a bit more motivating and makes it sweeter in the end.
Carli, there's 9 months until the World Cup. We know there's a lot of potential for growth with the U.S. team if Macario comes back and young players like Rodman and Gurma and Sophia Smith keep developing. But right now, if the World Cup was tomorrow, how many European teams do you think are as good or better than the U.S.?
I think it's very close. I think at the end of the day, these teams are tactically sophisticated, technically very good. But what I'm seeing a shift is on the mental and physical side. We're no longer, way mentally stronger and more fit than these teams. You're seeing teams being able to go for 90 minutes. You're seeing teams step out onto the field where they used to lose the game before they stepped out and played us. Now they're stepping out and they're feeling confident that they can beat us. And that is the shift, and that is the change. And you can have a team full of amazing, talented players, but as we've seen throughout the course of championships won, it's not all about talent. Getting to a World Cup and winning a World Cup really is all between the ears. It's the mind, it's the mentality. It's hard, it's gruesome. You've got pressure, you have, expectations, you have obligations throughout the tournament. The media are saying certain things. It's going to be really, really hard. And I think the biggest test for this U.S. group is going to be the mentality. Do they all have what it takes to dig deep, to weather the roller coaster of a ride? And if not, you're going to see some other team lifting that trophy. So I think at the moment right now, it's fair game for anybody.
Well, that mentality is something that you and many of your colleagues over the years have cultivated, that they have to live up to. But you mentioned something there that was interesting about the evolution and the progress of many of the other teams and some debutantes that we have here. When you look at it relative to the U.S., and there was a lot of talk during the draw about how far the rest of the world has come. Have they caught up? To your point, have they possibly passed us when it comes to the U.S.? Is it more what other countries have done, or is there an element of what the United States hasn't done? And if so, can you pinpoint any of those things? I guess it's a long question in terms of asking what are the things that the rest of the world has done to catch up, and what are the things maybe from the U.S. standpoint that we haven't done and maybe need to do to stay even a fraction ahead of the rest of the world?
I think the rest of the world, there's been more support and there's been more investment. Their leagues have gotten more competitive. I don't know that it's necessarily anything, different that they're doing. I think it's just the confidence in the rest of the world to know that the U.S. is no longer just the lone sole powerhouse out there. We are beatable. And unfortunately, you saw that in Tokyo. We went in as one of the top teams to bring home a gold medal. Loads of talent, but we didn't get it done because a lot of different reasons. You see a team like Canada, don't think they're better than the U.S., but they were a better team than us. And that's why they lifted or received that gold medal. So I think from the U.S. standpoint, we have all the resources, even more resources than when I first started on this team. You have an incredible amount of support staff. You have, the equipment guy bringing your boots to training. You don't have to worry about, the massages. I mean, there's not anything unturned that the U.S. team doesn't have at their fingertips. And so I think that what I'm seeing is just the mentality is a little bit different. It's a new group of players, a different mentality, a different generation. And you never want to get complacent. You never want to think that you've won anything when you haven't won anything. And so I don't think that there's necessarily anything in particular that isn't being done. It's, can they keep pushing on the legacy that has made this national team so special from the start?
Hold on, Carli. Did you just grumpy old woman the U.S. women's national team? Are they a bunch of spoiled brats in terms of what they have, and they're taking it all for granted?
No, but it's hard. It's hard to stay at the top. It's hard to be the number one team all the time. You're seeing just loads more support because the game has come so far, and that's just the way it is. You've got the pioneers and 99ers who didn't have what we all had in my years, and now the team is getting more things than what my group has had too. That's the evolution of the game. That's how you make things better, but you still have to have that hunger, that will, and that mentality to win at all costs. And once you lose that, it doesn't matter the support you have. It doesn't matter all of the things that you have, because it's not going to make a difference if you don't have that mentality. So, we've pushed the game further and further. The national team has become better and better. But it's up to each and every player to hold on to that mentality. That, for me, is what's going to win the next World Cup for them.
Carli, how would you rate the job that Vlatko Andonovski has done so far? U.S. fans seem a little split on him. Are you confident that he's the kind of manager that is up to it, that can lead the U.S. to another World Cup title?
Yeah, but, I think people are going to say all kinds of things. There's loads of opinions out there. I've was able to play for Vlatko for a short period of time towards the end of my career, and knows the game very well, tactically, made me think of the game in a different light and, continue to push on my game. So I think that, yeah, he tactically, knows the game very well. And really, I think the players, for me, watching from afar, they just need to play a little bit more free flowing. When you watch England and have watched them in the Euros and watched them against the national team just recently, everything just seems a little bit more free flowing. Playing off instincts, knowing where the player is going to be before the ball even comes to them. So I think that the U.S. right now are still trying to kind of figure things out. There's obviously loads of injuries, players that are missing, which are going to come back. You don't know how those players are going to come back after their injuries. But I think, he's doing a good job. The telling time is going to be, 9 months from now, how the team's going to look. They have another 2 good friendlies coming up against Germany. And then, come January, we will see what happens. But like I said, I'm going to keep harping on the mentality. I think you could be the smartest coach out there, have the most unbelievable tactics, but if the group doesn't believe within and they don't have the mentality to find a way to win at all costs, you're not winning a World Cup.
Carli, before we let you go here, and this is much more of a big picture type of question, but you talked a lot about mentality, and the Carli Lloyd mentality is something of legend. A lot of people talk about it. Very few people have it. When you look out over your career and you look out at women's soccer, who are some people that you think have a similar mentality to you? It doesn't have to be U.S. players that either have existed in the past and played in the past that you have played against or with out there, and then maybe some right now that you would look to, either teams or players that we could possibly see in the World Cup next summer, that you say that's the right mentality. Doesn't mean they're winning everything, but that they have that mentality that you can appreciate and respect and recognize.
I would say the first standout one, probably Pop on Germany. I was unfortunate how her Euros ended, but you could just you can see it in the players' eyes. You can see that there's another couple of levels and gears to them. And I think, from the collective standpoint with England, they may not necessarily have 1 or 2 players that pop out. I think just collectively that inner belief that they have. From the U.S. side over the years, I mean, I learned from the best. I learned from Shannon Box and Christine Lilly, Abby. Practices were absolutely brutal. If you did not bring your best every single day, players were going to let you know, or players would tackle you and send a message as well. Julie Ertz brought that day in and day out. And when you have players like that in the environment on a daily basis, you have to be at your absolute best. And that's what has, made this team just so unbelievable for the years. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, Christy Rampone, it's been incredible to have learned from so many of them of what the team is all about and how you have to elevate yourself each and every day to make sure that the whole group is elevating as well.
All right. Standing here right now, and like you said, there's still some time to go, but if you had to say right now, does the U.S. three-peat?
Being a player, you always like when people are knocking you down and not supporting. Right in this particular moment, I'm probably going to have to say no.
Okay.
But there's time.
Yep.
And they have a lot to prove. And that's the beauty of it. I think that they still have a lot more time to grow and become even better. So I'm excited to see that and excited to see what's to come for them.
Well, that's, to your point, I remember telling you to your face before the previous World Cup that I didn't think that you and the team were going to win the World Cup. And you certainly showed me. And so if there's an element of motivation behind your pick right there, then they can send the money to Carli Lloyd for that motivation. It's going to be fun. And we can't wait to see you in Qatar. And again, well done and congratulations on hosting yet another FIFA draw, the Women's World Cup draw 2023 down in Auckland, New Zealand. You were wonderful to watch. You were fun. You were funny. You were beautiful. And I think you got a job for a long time when it comes to hosting these FIFA draws. Go get some sleep because it's been a long week for you, and we will talk soon. Thank you so much. The great Carli Lloyd.
Appreciate it.
Okay, welcome back. I thought that was really interesting and great with Carli Lloyd. It's always fun to hear what she has to say about the team, and I think you got a real good sense of, as I mentioned, that Carli Lloyd spirit and personality and character and mentality. And it is now legendary when it comes to the way she thinks about the game and the way she thought as a player about herself in the game and the different paths and twists and turns that she took. So thank you to Carli Lloyd. And we look forward to also working with her coming in November and December. So she'll be on our studio desk talking about all the events going on when it comes to the World Cup in Qatar. All right, Mosse, last pod, we went and we did a little deep dive into the situations and the positions that Gregg Berhalter has, and we focused on the wingers and the striker position in the earlier pod. This week, we wanted to focus in on the midfield situations. Again, as we said before, a wealth of talent when it comes to the players that Gregg Berhalter has at his disposal. Maybe golden generation when it comes to all of the different players, where they are playing and how good they are. Where do you want to start here?
Well, if we're assuming the U.S. is going to play in a 4-3-3,
yes, okay,
then most people seem to be picking 6 midfield players, a starter and a backup at each spot. Keep in mind, as we discussed when we did our strikers and wingers, there are players like Gio Reyna and Brendan Aronson who might nominally go as wingers, but who can play in the midfield as well. But I think most people expect the starters to be Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Yunus Musah. And then I've seen players like Acosta, Luca De La Torre. Most people pretty confident they're going to be there as backups. I think Malik Tillman has a great chance to be in there as well, as that other backup 8, if you will. So I would start there and go from there.
Okay, so yes, I have yet to meet. Well, that's not true. But there are very few people that don't have Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Yunus Musah, including Gregg Berhalter, I think. And look, best laid plans. We all understand that, and knock on wood that everybody is healthy. As we know, even Yunus Musah missed the last window because of some injuries. Tyler Adams has had a history of injuries. Even Weston McKennie this year has been out for extended periods because of injuries. They are all back. They are all playing. And knock on wood, they are all healthy. And if that is the case, that is a formidable type of 3. And I think they've developed a really good connection and understanding about the roles specific to the way that Gregg Berhalter wants them to play. Tyler Adams is, he's not a reluctant leader, but he's just much more kind of reserved and mature beyond his years when he talks about the game and when you talk to him about the game. I think that he may, if he's healthy, he may end up being one of those unsung heroes of the sport. He's not flashy, but I think that Gregg Berhalter recognizes that there is a consistency of play and, more importantly, an understanding of exactly what the role is in terms of cleaning up in that middle 3 right there. Anything on Tyler Adams?
No, I agree. And by the way, the Gio and Aronson scenario kicks in if they do play that double pivot with Adams and Musah and have more of a 10. And then you could see Gio or Aronson play that role, which I guess would mean dropping Weston McKennie. But, it's something to think
when
about.
it comes to dropping one of those 3, the ones that I have heard the most have been Yunus Musah, even though I agree with my good friend Stu Holden in that he, for now, the last year, has targeted Musah as the breakout player and as has to be on the field. And yet when you start trying to fit in some of these players, when it comes down to it, people will say it's Musah that has to come out relative to replacing one of those 3, as opposed to Tyler Adams or Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie, I love him, but at times I'm sure he can be frustrating to play with on the field and to put in as a coach because, at times he freeforms it. And that can produce some wonderful results, but I think as he's grown and matured, he's kind of more picking and choosing his moments. And I think that's a good thing. I just think it's a form of, I think it's come from playing in Serie A in particular for Juventus, where his energy and his explosiveness and his coming late out of the midfield, he gets to pick and choose his moments when he does that. And I think it can be incredibly valuable. Although, if it doesn't work, he can get caught out of position, and that's where you're going to need the help of the Tyler Adams and Yunus Musah. If some of those players are hurt, we mentioned already, Kellyn Acosta at times has played very well under Gregg Berhalter. And the interesting thing is, I talk so much about set pieces, right? This particular team, as great as it is and has evolved as it is, I don't think they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. I just think that they're not particularly good on set pieces. They should be better on, and set pieces should be a much more lethal tool that we have. And it's not for lack of height. We have plenty of players that are good in the air, whether it's a Walker Zimmerman or an Aaron Long, or just being really good in the air, whether you're tall or not, like a Weston McKennie. I do think that at times using Christian Pulisic as your free kick taker has not been good. I mean, while Christian Pulisic is very good at a lot of things, I don't think he has a consistency. Kellyn Acosta, even though I don't think he's going to start, actually is much better in terms of the ball that he serves in. And so in a strange world, and I don't want anybody to get hurt, but who knows? At some point, Kellyn Acosta might get on the field. And if for nothing else, his service, if he's allowed to take it, might be the difference between scoring a goal, not scoring a goal, and even winning a goal. So I do think that Kellyn Acosta is going to be there. We talked about Paulo Arriola and the way that he can play multiple positions. I think Luca De La Torre has done enough to be on that plane, even though he's not playing a lot for Celta Vigo right now. He still, I think, has shown in that Gregg Berhalter system that he can come in and provide to your point, a different look. Because some of these guys come in and it changes, even though it's three, it changes the way they play.
So you've identified 5 guys, obviously the 3 starters, McKennie, Musah, Adams, and then Acosta and De La Torre that you think are pretty much locks. So if we were to squeeze in a 6th midfielder, I'm giving it to Malik Tillman. Do you see somebody else, a Mihailovic or somebody that could sneak in there?
I'd give it to Djordje Mihailovic, but I think it's going to be Malik Tillman. I think that Gregg Berhalter has a fondness for him, and I do too. I think he can be a good player. Yeah, but Djordje Mihailovic, timing is everything, Mosse, and just his timing is not great. He was hurt earlier in the year when it was supposed to be his kind of coming out party. Again, I thought he was great for Montreal down the stretch and showed even in the playoffs that why he has gotten a move to Europe. And I just think, for me, if people ask me who's going to be your biggest surprise, it could be one of those where on that November 9th day when Gregg Berhalter is reading it out, you hear Djordje Mihailovic because he had come into camp or whatever, or done enough where just take a flyer on him.
Anybody else? I know we've got a list here. Johnny Cardoso's on there.
I don't think Johnny's done enough. No.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's made enough of a positive impact, not just to us on the outside watching, but on the inside to the coaching staff to say that that's going to fly.
So bottom line, Adams, Musah, McKennie, Acosta, De La Torre, and then either Tillman or Mihailovic. That's how you would.
Yeah, that's the way that I look at it. Because I put Paul Arriola and like a Christian Roldan at much more of a winger type of thing. Because I do think that Christian Roldan is going to find a way to be there. I just think he is so liked that Gregg Berhalter is going to find a way to be there. I'm going to run out of spots real quick here because everybody's going to be on this plane.
All right, that's it.
All right, let's take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a look towards the weekend because there's some interesting stuff going on when it comes to Major League Soccer. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we're back, and we are in the midst of these MLS playoffs, and we have come down to the conference finals. As we mentioned, the Eastern Conference Final features the Philadelphia Union hosting NYCFC. That is on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. And then the Western Conference Final, LAFC hosting Austin. That happens on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on FS1. Okay, Philadelphia versus NYCFC, Mosse. Who you got and why?
I think Philadelphia get their revenge from last year. Obviously, they have all their players available. That's a stark contrast to the last playoff meeting. And just, I know we didn't see it against Cincinnati, but just this firepower, Carranza, Ura, Gazdag, I think they're more equipped to win a big playoff game this year than they've ever been before. And I think it's their year. I think they're going to MLS Cup.
I think the fact that they have, well, almost all their players, because we still don't know whether Bedoya is back. And so they've done it without Bedoya, and he has been a talisman. He's been talismanic, right? That's what they say for the Union. I think the problem is that actually being at full strength or close to full strength relative to last year, I think it's going to give them a false sense of security. I think NYCFC, who, as we know, I have in my final and winning in my final, beat the Philadelphia Union and go to their second final in a row. Yes. Now, look, both great teams. I do think that Philadelphia has the slight edge when it comes to goalkeeping. And we talked earlier this week about, like a Stuver or something like that, which can fundamentally change your fates. And Andre Blake is just phenomenal. And there's a reason why not only winning goalkeeper of the year, but also he was up for Major League Soccer MVP.
Question on NYCFC. Even if Thales Magno is deemed completely healthy, Eber has scored in both playoff games so far. So do you think he starts up top and Magno is a super sub?
Well, I don't like Thales Magno up top anyway. I think he's better out wide. But I don't think that he takes, if it's only Eber or Thales Magno, given the fact that Thales Magno was hurt, I think you go to Eber. I think he plays the position better.
And of those young Brazilians, it's interesting. Right now, Gabriel Pereira is the guy that's really emerged and feels like the most important of the three between himself, Thales Magno, and Thiago Andrade. He's really come on nicely. Former Corinthians player, so I'm loving watching him.
Yeah. All right. So you got Philly, and I got NYCFC.
Yep.
All right. Should we move on to the Western Conference final?
Yep. LAFC hosting Austin.
Oh, my goodness. Delectable. Wonderful. We talked earlier in the week about what LAFC is or isn't. First off, do you think that Bale or Chiellini do you think they'll start?
I don't think either will start.
You think that they'll both be on the bench?
Yes.
Okay, so at least for Bale, that's a step up, right? So he's actually in contention to get some playing time, right? As opposed to Chiellini, who was on the bench over there and will be brought in. I'm going with LAFC over Austin. I think wonderful year for Austin, but I think LAFC is feeling it. I think at home, I just think they're a better team ultimately.
I agree. I think we're headed for a dream MLS Cup. Really, we can't go wrong with any of these matchups. But, we talk about how unpredictable the MLS playoffs are. We could have a showdown of two number one seeds that were the two best teams in the regular season by far in Philadelphia and LAFC battle for the Supporters Shield. So that would be kind of interesting if the playoffs feel like an extension of the regular season.
So where can MLS Cup be? All right. Obviously, it can be at LAFC because they're the number one seed. If they were to win and go to MLS Cup, then for sure they are hosting it. And then it would be... Can it be in New York?
No.
Okay. It can be in Austin, though, right?
Correct.
If NYCFC win and Austin win,
correct,
then it could be, oh, my God, can you imagine MLS Cup in Austin? Wow. I think it's going to be in L.A. anyway.
It's a shame because if NYCFC, I'd love to see an MLS Cup at Rentschler Field.
You're such a jerk. I love you. I love you. So really, you don't think that Driussi and company have enough to come into LAFC and find a result there? Not a result.
It's going to be a great game, and as I said, they won both regular season meetings. But I just think it's LAFC and Philadelphia's years. They're going to go to MLS Cup, and we're going to get this collision.
All right. So that's what we'll be watching when it comes to an MLS perspective, and by the end of the weekend, we will have our MLS Cup final. When I say we at Fox, we are broadcasting. We are privileged enough to be able to broadcast this MLS Cup. So we will find our way either staying here in Los Angeles or going to Philadelphia, or who knows, maybe even going to Austin, depending on the results. What else is happening this weekend, Mosse?
Yeah, a couple of games in Europe we want to highlight. First one in England, Liverpool hosting Leeds, and the reason we highlight this game, obviously, is because it's make or break for Jesse Marsch. If he's still on the bench by the time this match occurs, if they were to lose this game badly, which is entirely possible. I know Liverpool have been hot and cold this season, but when they've been good, they've been really good. I mean, they're the type of team you catch them on the wrong day, they could beat you 5 or 6-0. So Jesse's got to pull a rabbit out of the hat here. Otherwise, I think he's in real trouble.
I mean, and again, Jesse, if Jesse gets fired, right, what is he? He's really going to have to be able to say, you know, we played well, and nobody cares. Ultimately, it's about winning. I understand that, but in this case, if you look at Leeds and the games that they have played, and I guess more importantly, the games that they have lost, they've rarely just been blown off the field. Okay, from a score and or playing perspective, and the amount of chances that they have missed, and you know, Jesse Marsch can only do so much, and this isn't me excusing the results, because Jesse's a big boy. He understands that it comes with the territory, and you have to recognize that it's much easier to fire a coach or a manager than it is to fire a team, and ultimately you're going to take the hit. But you know, even in the game last weekend, the amount of opportunities and clear-cut opportunities that were missed is appalling. So they're going to have to find a way, obviously, to convert those chances, and regardless of how it ends up happening, get the result. And while this is a poor Liverpool team, it still is a better team than Leeds. So they got their handful. I think losing to Liverpool would not necessarily be the the ultimate moment. Losing badly to Liverpool, I don't think that's going to bode well for Jesse Marsch. And so if it is, you know, the final nail in the coffin, in order to avoid it, try not to, if you're going to lose, don't lose badly to Liverpool. Easier said than done.
And then one game in Spain we'll have an eye on, Valencia hosting Barcelona. Barcelona looking to keep pace with Real Madrid at the top of the table, so that should be a pretty good one.
Okay. Anything else?
A couple of non-European. This upcoming weekend is the Copa Libertadores final. On Saturday, Flamengo against Atlético Paranaense, third straight year. It's an all-Brazilian affair. This match taking place at Guayaquil, Ecuador, one of your favorite cities.
Wow. My goodness. Home of Emelec.
And we'll see how many fans are there. As we've talked about on the podcast last few weeks, that's been sort of a narrative that these one-off neutral venue finals in South America haven't really been as successful as they hoped. I think the Libertadores ones have been pretty good, but the Sudamericana ones haven't. We'll see how the Libertadores one looks, if that stadium is packed and it looks like a great atmosphere and befitting of a continental final.
So when was the last time that a Brazilian team didn't win?
So you have to go back to 2018, which was the River Boca final, which, remember, the second leg of that, there was all sorts of crowd trouble, and so that had to be moved to Madrid. And so we in a sense, got the neutral venue final thing going a year earlier than anticipated, because that sort of turned into that, and then it's been like that ever since. Flamengo won it 2019, beat River Plate, Gabigol with a couple late goals in that one, and then now this is the third straight all-Brazilian finals.
Well, what's your safe money on, if you had to put it on someone?
Flamengo should win. A few things to keep an eye on. They have a center forward, Pedro, who is the top scorer in the Libertadores this year, who is likely to go to the World Cup with Brazil. So in terms of a World Cup perspective, you should watch the game just for that.
Okay.
And then if you're thinking ahead to the 2026 World Cup in the United States, Atlético Paranaense have a young teenage striker, Vitor Roque, who I love, who I think is one of the great up-and-coming talents in Brazilian football. He's going to be at a big Europe. Yeah, well, I'm doing it's an R. I'm pronouncing it, authentically.
I mean, look, if I can call a guy hockey, I'm going to call a guy hockey. I mean,
Vitor Roque, if you want to Americanize it. So have an eye on those two guys, and you have some recognizable names. Fernandinho plays for Atlético Paranaense. David Luiz plays for Flamengo. These veteran guys that come back to play in South American football late in their careers. Flamengo are coached by Scolari, World Cup winner in 2002, also presided over the 7-1 in 2014, but he's looking to win the Libertadores with a third different club. He's already won it with Grêmio and Palmeiras. So there are plenty of storylines there. Hopefully people check it out. And most importantly, from an American perspective, there's Seattle Sounders Club World Cup implications.
Yes.
The winner of this final goes to that tournament. The draw hasn't occurred yet. We don't even know where and when that tournament will occur, but presumably it'll take place sometime in early 2023.
Yeah, February 23, I think.
Depending on how the draw shakes out, Seattle could be facing the South American champion in a semifinal, so it would be either Flamengo or Atlético Paranaense. So Seattle Sounders fans want to watch this game to scout a potential opponent for the Club World Cup. And then one more for you, Liga MX. We've reached the final. Toluca against Pachuca over 2 legs. The second leg is on Sunday, and so I'll be able to talk about that on our first pod of next week. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Libertadores final and everything else, MLS, Europe, etc.
Oh, my goodness. All right, cool. All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, I'll give you my one for the road. Okay, welcome back. It's the end of another episode here, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. This week, or not this week, this show, I want to talk a little bit about the Women's World Cup and what it is and what it isn't. And it was wonderful talking to Carli Lloyd. And, if you listened a couple times, I brought her back to that game against Thailand because I think it said a whole lot about women's soccer and the Women's World Cup. And it was interesting being down in Auckland, Mosse, and seeing the incredible excitement about what is going to come to Australia and New Zealand, for what it means for those countries, for what it means for the Women's World Cup and women's soccer, but just what it means for soccer. And it's grown so fast and has really shown, a power and value to the hosts, to the participants, and ultimately to FIFA. But, Carli was talking about that Thailand game where, for a lot of people, they were critical and, even at times cringing because they viewed it as the U.S. beating up on obviously inferior competition and, not doing it in a way that they felt was proper or respectful. And as I told Carli, I think that's BS. I think it's ridiculous. The women's game, or in this case, the Women's World Cup, it is not a charity, okay? This is a competition. And yes, it is expanded. And yes, there are greater goods that come out of a World Cup. But ultimately, whether it's Carli Lloyd or any of the players that we are going to see represent their country next summer, the moment that whistle blows, it is about competition. And if you are in the competition, then I think it is up to you to make sure that you do everything in your power to win. And if that's continuing to score goals, and a lot of goals, then you do it. And you don't apologize for it. Now, how you act and how you hold yourself before, during, and after, that can come in for criticism. But ultimately, this responsibility or greater good that we seem to be putting on, in this case, it was the U.S. women's national team, but it could apply to other national teams out there relative to who they are playing. Now, this is competition. And whether it's the competition on the field or the competition off the field, what are we finding out is you should tune in and you should be a part of it and you should enjoy it. Again, not out of a sense of responsibility or a sense of charity, but because there is value. And when it comes to the money that is being put into the game, it's not a donation. Again, it's not a charity. It's because you're going to get something back. But the only way that this ultimately grows is if it is taken seriously. And taking your foot off the gas, not playing up to your abilities, or being soft on other teams, that's not what sports is about. And at the highest level, that's not what sports are about. You are coming to the World Cup. You are coming to the highest level of your game, the highest level of competition, international competition. And you better bring it. And if you don't, and you are exposed for your weakness, don't cry and don't whine, either as people being on the bad end of a score, or if and when your team actually goes out and do what they, in many cases, are paid to do at the highest level, and go and win. And so I'm excited. And so that first U.S. game against Vietnam, yes, I expect us to win. Yes, I expect us to win by multiple goals and a lot of goals, and for it to be comprehensive from start to finish. And I expect us to score and to keep scoring and not to take our foot off the gas. And sure as hell not to apologize to anybody for doing it. You're the number one team in the world, and this is the World Cup. Charity can happen later. And the experience of it that can be translated and transformed and brought back to a country and culture through the game, that can certainly happen. But I just thought it was interesting to hear Carli in that it almost motivated the U.S. team even more to hear that type of criticism back in the previous World Cup when they beat up on Thailand. And I just thought it was so strange and weird for an American soccer culture, but an American culture to toot the U.S. women's national team for being good. You know, sure as hell don't have to apologize for being good and for being winners and for going out and wanting to win the game. Mosse, anything before we go?
You know, I just asked that as sort of a jokey icebreaker first question. I didn't know it was going to spawn a one for the road, and we're still litigating this 4 years.
We're not litigating it. It just, because immediately when that ball was drawn, and it was Vietnam, I mean, I looked around and I saw the smirks, and I saw the wheels starting to turn from people that, here we go. We could have another...
well, and again, it could be Thailand again.
And we could have a Thailand things. I mean, look, the U.S., we all know there's only a handful of teams out there that actually give us a game. And that's starting to change, okay? But while it's changing, the U.S. women's national team should never accept being less than what they are for the good of the game. No. Everybody else has to catch up to us. We don't have to hold back. And we never should. And by the way, they will catch up. And there will be times where they pass us. And that's a good thing for the game. But, you know, we're not going to slow down so that people don't look bad in that race. All right. Anyway, Mosse. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. We thank you for tuning into our second episode of the week, State of the Union Soccer podcast. Well, I'm having a good time doing this. Are you, my friend?
This podcast?
Yeah, just in general. We've been doing it now a while.
It's okay.
That's okay. All right. Well, I'll take that. That's enough for me. Continue to, send us all your questions out there, your Ask Alexi questions, and continue to, give us your feedback when it comes to the State of the Union podcast hotline, 657-549-2297. Another big thank you to Carli Lloyd, the great Carli Lloyd, for joining us yet again. She's becoming a regular. I think she enjoys it even more than you do. I don't want to speak for her, but long live Carli Lloyd. Long live Rutgers University. We will talk to you again next week. And until then, and as always, size the day.